Good morning. It's good to be here with you again. And I thought we would start actually with a little bit of audience participation. It's actually a question I'm going to ask you, and I want you just to shout out your answers to it. All right. When did you see the first signs of the celebration of Christmas this year? August? Wow, okay. September? November? I mean, it used to be Thanksgiving, then you get into the spirit of the season of Christmas. But I was actually in a store the day before Halloween, and they were already stocking the shelves with Christmas stuff. The story we just heard speaks about waiting, and December is often a time of waiting. Though from hearing you, maybe it's August that already begins the period of waiting. For Christians, it is a season of Advent that marks 4 weeks prior to the celebration of Christmas, which interestingly was only created on December 25th in 336 of the Common Era. But there's really periods of waiting, or waiting as a theme, in many of the world's religions. Patience, waiting. In Hinduism, patience and forbearance were considered essential virtues. In the Hindu holy book, the Bhagavad Gita states, "Set thy heart upon thy work, but not upon its reward." And in Islam, there are many periods of waiting. Perhaps the most well-known is the month of Ramadan, where you must wait every day for sunset so that you can break the fast. And of course, there's often a lifelong waiting to make the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca. But waiting is also a theme in many literary books. The one that came to mind for me was Samuel Beckett's classic play for the theater of the absurd, Waiting for Godot. In 1992, Robert Keck published a book called Sacred Eyes. And if I had a theme this morning, that's what I want to share with you, is how you can view the world differently through sacred eyes, and how you can even look upon waiting as a gift instead of something you simply have to endure. I want to use the traditional names of the 4 Advent candles as themes that can inspire reflection, contemplation, and action, not just in December, but anytime. But in a world that is consumed with consumerism, December might be just the right month to do it each year. So, some of the themes of the candles are hope, joy, peace, and love. We've heard several of those themes already in your worship this morning, as you lit the chalice, as you heard in the children's story, as we will sing in the hymn that follows my sermon this day. But we cannot wait, I think, for some things. And we cannot wait, first of all, for hope. This is today the first day of Hanukkah. And so our Jewish brothers and sisters are beginning to celebrate what they call the Festival of Lights. It's a holy holiday that commemorates the rededication of the temple, the second temple in Jerusalem, after the Maccabees revolted and basically beat out the Syrian occupiers. And the miracle of Hanukkah, of course, is that while there was only oil in the lamp on the altar in the temple for 1 night, it lasted 8. Also, we have the season and the celebration of Kwanzaa, which again has multiple candles in their candle stand to mark each day and each theme of Kwanzaa. I think hope is needed more today than ever, because I think we live in a world that is really filled with fear and despair. And hope, I believe, is the antidote to that fear and despair. The prophet Isaiah from the Jewish tradition said, "The Holy One shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. We live in that hope, I believe, today. And Shane Claiborne, who is an activist, wouldn't wait for that hope to come many, many years ago. So what he did is he organized a group of people, and they take assault weapons that have been turned into the police, and they melt them down, turning them into farm implements, garden tools. So literally, spears are being pounded into pruning hooks. And Victoria Safford wrote an essay entitled "Standing at the Gates of Hope." And I think this perhaps capsulizes and summarizes what the season of hope, wherever it is, can mean. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, nor the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges. People cannot hear us there. They cannot pass through. Nor the cheerful, flimsy gate of everything's going to be all right, but a different, sometimes lonely place, the place of truth-telling about your own soul, first of all, and its condition, the place of resistance and defiance, the piece of ground from which you see the world both as it is and as it could be, and as it will be, the place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but joy in the struggle. And we stand there, beckoning and calling, telling people what they are seeing, and asking people what they see. Again, if you have the gift of sacred eyes, the world is very different from what most people see. And Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." So the second candle that is often lit on the Advent wreath is what we also cannot wait for. We cannot wait for peace. In fact, your own sixth principle says, can we continue to say that we want world community with peace, justice, and liberty? At the Global Convention of Peace and Nonviolence in New Delhi in January 31st, 2004, Nelson Mandela said these, I think, sacred words. "Peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace is the creation of an environment where all can flourish, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, gender, class, caste, or any other social markers of difference. Religion, ethnicity, language, social and cultural practices are elements which enrich human civilization, adding to the wealth of our own diversity. Why should they be allowed to become a cause of division and violence? We demean our common humanity by allowing that to happen." Those words are words that hurt me in one sense, because I think we live in a society and a country that is more divided than it's ever been in centuries. And how can there be peace if there is division? In fact, Archbishop Tutu said that he had to confront that kind of division in his own country. And when Nelson Mandela became president, one of the things he did was create the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was to confront the ugliness of apartheid. And the fifth step of AA's 12-step program is admit to God, to ourselves, and to one another, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And Canada also then took that lead for the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, the largest class action settlement in Canadian history, began to be implemented in 2007. And one of the elements of the agreement was the establishment of their own Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Canada to facilitate reconciliation among former students, their families, and their communities, and all Canadians because of the atrocities that were committed in the Indian schools. Again, from the Jewish tradition, we have this wonderful view of the peaceable kingdom. And in fact, Isaiah and others talk about the lion and the lamb shall lie down together. There'll be that kind of peace. I remember Woody Allen's famous quib, the lion and the lamb will lie down together, but the lamb won't be getting much sleep. The other thing that I think we wait for, and we can't wait for, is joy. And there's a difference between happiness and joy. We heard it a little bit in the readings today. They are not the same. For every person who says joy is an underlying truth that good or bad circumstances can't dictate, and that happiness is rooted in circumstance, there'll be others who think just the opposite. That joy is just a state of mind, the outcome of mind seeking happiness and the focus on pleasure, pleasing thoughts, and pleasant experiences. Despite the different perspectives, the idea that holds greater sway today is that the experiencing of happiness depends on external factors. Happiness happens to us. Even though we may seek it, desire it, pursue it, feeling happiness is not a choice we make. Joy, on the other hand, is a choice purposely made. Happiness doesn't bring joy, and joy isn't the byproduct of happiness. Joy is something grander than happiness. Joy is a fruit of compassion, and when we find joy, it's infused with comfort, and I believe it's wrapped in peace. In 2015, Desmond Tutu, the former South African Archbishop and anti-apartheid pioneer, traveled to Dar es Salaam, a place in India, and home to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for his 80th birthday. I had the pleasure of meeting His Holiness when I was chaplain at Williams College. And the one takeaway I had from him is he exuded a sense of peace and a sense of joy. And that was just being in his presence. It wasn't words, it was simply his demeanor, his words of comfort. So both of them fought non-violently against oppression in their countries for over 50 years, while leading millions of people in their spiritual journeys. Hence, they took this special occasion as a chance to sit down together, and it lasted 8 days for them to talk about life's most important question. How do we find joy in the face of suffering? And their conversations were highlighted in a book I highly recommend, The Book of Joy. In it, we find these words: discovering more joy does not, I'm sorry to say, save us from inevitable hardships and heartbreaks. In fact, we may cry more easily, but we will laugh more easily too. Perhaps we are just more alive. Yet as we discover more joy, we can face suffering in a way that ennobles rather than embitters. We have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken. Taking care of others, the Dalai Lama said, helping others, ultimately is the way to discover your own joy and to have a happy life. And research, even as recently as a few years ago, has actually found that joy, not happiness, but a sense of joy, actually can strengthen our psychological immune system and gives us more emotional resiliency. So don't wait for joy. Enter into it and claim it. And finally, that fourth candle is one that is spoken of again in your service and in most faith communities, that we cannot wait for love. And I believe there are messengers of love all around us if we simply have the eyes and the ears to hear and see. Paul Tillich, a Protestant theologian, wrote a book called The Courage to Be. And he said a fresh interpretation of love is needed that shows that love is basically not an emotion, but an ontological power, that it is the essence of life itself, namely the dynamic reunion of that which is separated. And I think we all remember that song. I bet you could sing it if you wanted to. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And not just for some, but for everyone, it says. Nadia Bolz-Weber said in the book, "It is from the heart we come, and to this heart we return. And it beats around us, and it is shown in the simmering love that absolutely covers the world." If you have eyes to see, you will see love flowing just about everywhere, whether it's sitting by a brook, or taking a hike up a mountain, or talking to people, working with people at the food bank. You will see love if you simply open your eyes and your heart to it. Brene Brown said that the word courage actually comes from the root word cor, which in Latin means heart. In one of its earliest forms, the word courage had a very different definition than it does today. Courage originally meant to speak one's mind, for telling all one's heart. Over time, this definition has changed, and today courage is more synonymous with being heroic. But if we think of courage as part of that ontological love that the divine being wants to share with all of us and wants us to therefore then share it with others, then that takes, I think, courage today. I want to close with one of my favorite stories about Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was speaking at a conference, and there was this pilgrim who took 4 days on the train to get to the city that the conference was being held in. He simply wanted to hear Mahatma Gandhi, but he got there just as he was leaving the stage. And he followed him, and as Mahatma Gandhi was actually getting on a train to leave the town, he yelled out at him, "What is your central message? That's what I need to take back to my people." And Mahatma Gandhi couldn't hear. And so he yelled at it again, and finally Gandhi took a piece of paper and he scribbled something on it, and he handed it to the crowd, and they passed it back all the way to this pilgrim. And when he opened it up, this is what Gandhi had written: "My life is my message." My hope and prayer for you, my friends, and for myself is that our lives will always convey a message of love. Love for yourself, for others, for creation, for truth, for justice, and for the holy. And so as a final word, kind of a blessing, I want to take it from a rather unique source, the movie Bodyguard. In it, there was a song that was written by Dolly Parton, but it was so powerfully sung by Whitney Houston. It contains these, my words for you this day. "And I hope life will treat you kind, and I hope that you will have all that you ever dreamed of. Oh, I do wish you joy, and I wish you happiness. But above all this, I wish you love." Thank you.